We will spend our lives fighting to secure this Imperium. And then, I fear we will spend the rest of our days fighting to keep it intact. In the far future, there will be only war.
Welcome to LItBashing, where the L stands for Legions, the I stands for Imperialis, and the Kitbashing stands for Kitbashing. Along with the Death Guard, Iron Hands, and Sons of Horus, the Imperial Fists are one of the Legion's Games Workshop have chosen to be the box art standards for their new game. So it brings me great joy to bring the first Fisty LItbash to the channel for February's character series. Sigismund, or Sigismund, delete as appropriate, his readability check shows the following key features, so he doesn't just look like another little naked Lego man on the table. There's his iconic pose, treading the borderline between aggressive and defensive, and the pointy metal stick which goes with it. There's his proto-Templar tabard flowing in the breeze, the iron halo-y looking thing here, and then there's the fact he's standing on a destroyed bloody tank. And it's this tank which is going to change our usual order of things, because Siggy's pose is so vital and the position of his legs is dependent on the angle we get his base at. So let's start with the base this time. On the original miniature, he's standing on a busted up Sakaran. Now I'm crazy, obviously, but I'm not cutting up the gold dust that is Sakaran's crazy. So our Sigismund will have to settle for standing on a Lehman Russ, which I already had cannibalised for our Iron Circle Kitbash, so no harm there. Sorry, Solar. I used clippers to smash one side of a Sakaran and give it a good angle, and some Malkador las cannons to spread around the base to mimic the base of the bigger mini. Once I was happy with the various smashy bits, it was time to blend it all together with loads of superglue and a bath in the sandpit. Before the glue cured completely, I scrapped some of the excess off. That's bad typing on my part. I scraped some of the excess off with a finger that then became very sandy for quite a while afterwards. And then I moved on to our pose. Finding a pose was tough. There was no combination of legs and torso, or even separate legs that matched the leaning backwards bent right leg pushing forwards left that was going to be vital to sell this. I eventually settled on the missile launcher captain. His legs were just about the closest, he didn't have a gun getting in the way of his torso, he had the closest thing to an empty non-power fist that might be useful with the pointy arm, and generally he just seemed to give the most freedom in terms of what we could do. That freedom being chopping off both of his arms, because we'll need to swap the shoulder pads around, and fully decapitating him to get rid of that not very Sigismundy beaky helmet. Once we had a nice set of torso and legs, it was time to source the other bits. The Tactical Champion's power sword looked best for the part this time, so I shamelessly stole it, and cleaned up the shoulder pads from before. Sigismund, not being in Mark 6 armour, has the studs on his right arm and insignia on the left, and we need all the readability help we can get. The pose was not elegantly created. His legs were basically forced into position and then glued to the base to keep them there. Tactical rocks are one thing, but tactical tanks, oh boy. There's an awkward hip joint here, but I think the tabard, when sculpted, will cover that fine. Siggy is one of those characters with two head options, a bare head and an old-fashioned helmet style. To choose which head, I went to Patreon to ask the patron who requested him, and who will be receiving it in the post once it's done, and I've taken some good pictures. If you join my Patreon and come up with an idea for a good content, you get to keep the mini when I eventually get round to it, especially if it's a filthy loyalist to get it out of my house. So please, come join us, give me more ideas, increase the monthly budget of the channel, and get some free stuff. Anyway, helmet head it is, which means we won't be getting a squishy alien green stuff Edvard Munch face this time around. What a shame. For the helmet, in absence of available Mark III helms, the Mark II from the tank commanders more than suffices, with a little cleanup. I considered sculpting a laurel, but at this scale I genuinely think it would just look messy in 3D, so some bump mapping with the paint will do for that. Swapping the shoulder pads was easy enough with a little sprue goo, but getting the arms in the right position almost made me resort to superglue, but I didn't want bits flying off mid-transit and Wohammer needing to do repairs on the other side, so I persevered and eventually got a pose I was happy with. Finally, a little bit of green stuff applied sparingly gave the effect of a tabard, which will hopefully be made better with paint. Speaking of which, onto the painting. Because this might be the most noble character I'll ever paint, I didn't want to do my usual grungy build-up from black. So instead, I started with a red spray base, zenithalled with white. I'm hoping this gives old Siggy an appropriately vibrant scheme amongst the rabble and rubble. On top of this, I started the base colours: corn red sword handle, retributor armour, and lead belcher metal. And well, that's it, because most of the heavy lifting is going to be done by Cassandora yellow, a shade that's basically a contrast. A couple of coats of this will give us a smooth, warm, matte yellow finish, ready for highlighting, and also bring together the character as a warm beacon above this base. The base, to contrast, is given a base of thinned ink by darkness, picking out a few metallic elements with lead belcher, and then giving the whole thing a wash of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil. Hopefully, enough of the red shadow tones will show through to unite the piece in a wanky, arty kind of way, but also provide that pop that's necessary for readability. Once that's dry, it's speed paint time. Layer up a couple of Dawn yellow glazes to bring out the highlights on the armour, then give a highlight to the other elements with Wazdaka red, Runefang steel, Liberator gold, Corax white, and White Star. Now the fun bit: freehanding the black trim and logo. Do as much as you dare to do. I just did the shoulder pads, tabard and icon, and I think that's enough without any sculpted elements to help keep things in check. Any more, and I think it'll just look messy. For the laurels, a line of dark green, I used Cabalite, and flecks of a light green, Ogrin Camo, is plenty. Finally, the base gets a heavy dry brush of iron rack skin, and the rim gets a nice, neat black line. Then I think we're done. Let's see how he looks.